up, everybody? Welcome back to Diesel Creek. My name is Matt. This is the absolute cheapest ride-on floor scrubber that I could find anywhere. So as I'm sure you guys are all aware at this point, I built myself a nice new shop here, and I got this big concrete floor that is really nice. They did a great finish on the floor, and I want to try to keep it clean so that I can enjoy it properly and not have it just covered in crap all the time. And realistically, I know myself, there's no way that if I have to push a broom to clean this whole big room that I'm going to do it regularly anyway. If that's how I had to do it, it would probably only get done once or twice a year. So I did borrow a floor scrubber not long after the building was completely dried in. I ran the floor scrubber over the floor before I put a wax coating on the floor, and that thing was awesome. It was an Advance as well, but it was a walk-behind model. Knowing myself, I figured, well, a ride-on model would be awful nice, but they're awful pricey. I think the equivalent model to this one, if you were to go buy it new, is probably like $25,000-ish. They're not cheap. They're pretty proud of them. They work great, so I didn't want to spend that, of course. It's not really worth it for what I'm doing here. But I didn't want to be pushing a broom or renting one a few times a year. So my buddy Sam from Scrappy Industries, he sent me a Craigslist link the other night and said, "Hey bud, this is a cheap one." I said, "It sure is." So of course, I did what you have to do when you find a screaming deal. I went and bought it. I paid $1,000 for this thing, and like I said, brand new ones, probably pushing $25,000, so I'm pretty happy with that. The thing is in remarkably good condition for $1,000, and according to the guy I bought it from, he said really the only thing it needs is batteries. So that remains to be seen. It doesn't have any batteries in it, but we're gonna throw some batteries in this thing and see if it works, and if it does, we're gonna clean the floor. So for the curious minds that just want to know, this is an advanced brand HR, which I believe means Hydro Retriever, 2800 model. The 28 refers to the width of scrubber brush that it has on it, and this type of machine does not have a disc scrubber like you would see in a lot of commercial office buildings, Walmarts, that kind of thing. They may use these as well, but this is a drum scrubber. And talking to the salesman for the local company that sells these things new, he told me that the drum scrubbers are much better suited for a shop environment where you're going to be picking up larger debris, chunks of mud, nuts and bolts, sticks, that kind of thing. So I was keeping my eye out for a drum unit, and lo and behold, we finally found one. Not much to these things. They're pretty simple, pretty easy to operate. Under here is where the batteries should be, but as you can see, we do not have any batteries. We do have a couple random wires coming down into this compartment though that I'm not sure exactly what they even do, so that's interesting. Over here is the main battery connection. That takes an Anderson style connector, like what you would have on a forklift. This would be interesting to see. According to this marker, we have 1,029 hours in February of 2014. So if we connect some batteries to this thing and the hour meter still works, I'll be interested to see how many hours they've put on since 2014. The guy I bought it from just told me he didn't have a use for it anymore, so that's why he sold it. This here is your clean water tank, and I'm kind of concerned because there was some water in there when I got this thing, some cleaning solution. You could smell it had soap in it. And I parked it out there and it froze a couple times. I could not find any way to easily drain this model. I'm sure there is one, but on the pallet I really couldn't see much. So anyway, the water leaked out. I could see it was all over the ground one day after it froze a couple times. So that's concerning. This is your wastewater tank. You really can't see much in there at the time, but that's just where all your dirty water accumulates, and then you pop this drain off and drains it out. That does not, however, drain the, oh, look at that. We got a clog in there. All right, well, that seems like a good place to start. Anyways, enough gabbing about this thing. Let's try to get it off of this pallet and get some power to this thing and see what happens. This thing isn't crazy heavy, but it's a lot heavier than you want to be lifting by hand, that's for sure. I don't know if you guys can really hear me or not over the forklift, but I had no idea that this tank came off like that. So I started to lift on it and it just lifted up off of there. I was a little bit nervous at first. I thought I broke something, but looks like it's designed to do that, so that's good. All right, so I actually almost went out and spent a crap load of money on a brand new set of batteries for this thing. But then I remembered I have what was a brand new set of batteries in these man lifts that I bought from the Ritchie Brothers sale last year and never did anything with. So before I go buy new batteries, might as well use these ones. I think the ones that were designed for this machine were just a little bit taller than these ones, equating to more amp hours. But I think these will do fine for the size of my building. If I was trying to do a much bigger building, bigger batteries may be something nice to have. But I'm not. There we go, 4 batteries in place. Okay, so we got to hook our batteries up in a series, just like they show right there on the diagram. That's what all these crossover connectors are for. And then we were missing the wiring harness that originally went to these batteries, all the connections. So I picked up a spare Anderson connector here, and we'll have to connect a couple leads to that to get our positive and negative off of the series. Pretty much you just connect all the batteries positive to negative and you should wind up with 24 volts. All right, let's figure this guy out. Well, I was able to scare up some good solid copper leads here for us. We just got to skin these guys back right about there. Yep, just like that. I don't think my crimper is going to want to crimp this. That's a pretty thick connector, but we can try. And if not, what we'll have to do is fill it up with lead solder, keep it nice and molten, and then just dip our lead in there and let it cool down. All right, so I had to get some solder because I'm not going to be able to crimp these things. I stuck it in my crimper a little bit and I could just see the crimper flexing. I didn't want to tear it up. So what I like to do for stuff like this is get you a good gob of flux paste on your piece of cable there. I'm just going to heat it up enough to where it kind of melts into the copper. Take your solder, start heating up this connector and then start feeding it the solder until you get basically a puddle of molten solder inside of the connector. All right, so that definitely felt like a nice good connection there. We'll let that cool down while we do the other one. I think I probably had it a little too hot there. All right, so we got that end on. This part goes into the Anderson connector. It should just push right in the back of this thing. It's got like a spring-loaded deal that locks it in there. See that? All right, so we got those in there. Now for the other side here, I just tinned the end of these cables a little bit. Now what that means is I just basically melted some flux into the strands, and that'll give us a better, harder surface to crimp an eye connector onto. So just slip these over the end like so, and then we can just crimp that guy right on there now. All right, now we should have a good connection there. All right, we should be able to go connect this thing to our battery pack now, and hopefully the scrubber comes alive. All right, moment of truth here. I'm gonna plug this connector in, and hopefully nothing catches on fire. I guess this is actually pretty appropriate to say contact. Contact. Look at that. Well, I don't hear any sparks. Nothing smoking yet. No beeps or boops out of the machine though. No signs of life at all. Oh, look at that! Error 04, ruh-roh. What does that mean? What happens if we hit that button that's blinking? Oh, look at that, the horn works. Error 04. The switch seems to be a 3-position, but it's only connected in a 2-position configuration. Well, there we go. It did a whole different thing this time. Things are green, showing hours. What are we? 1036.2, 1029 in 2014. So this thing has not seen many hours at all since 2014. Look at that. That is awesome. Well, now what do we do? I guess we got to try to take this thing for a drive and see if anything's going to work on it. Oh, this guy's all full of crap. This really needs blown out good. So I've never run one of these things before. I honestly don't know how it even works. Okay, well that's that guy. She's a little flimsy. What's the dealio here? It works. Maybe. This thing's fantastic. Oh man, this is gonna be great. All right, so it runs and drives and even stops. I just shut it off so I can explain this to you. It's like a hydrostatic pedal on a lawn tractor or something. You just push it forward for forward and rotate it back for back. Pretty self-explanatory. We got to see if any of this stuff works. The squeegee and the vacuum head should both raise and lower with the push of a button here. I apologize for the rain noise. It's probably getting kind of loud in here now. It's raining really hard outside. So let's see, what do we got here? Down. Oh yeah, I dropped the squeegee down. Error 04. All right, so from my very basic understanding of how this unit works, that button there raises all your squeegee and your broom head. This one here should lower it down and apply the vacuum once it's down. See, we're getting that error 04 code, which I'm gonna have to find a manual and figure out what that means exactly. But it doesn't seem like the broom head, which is in the center here, it doesn't seem like it's lowering down at all. So we might have an issue there. Now if I flick the switch off and then back on, still has an error code. One more time, and it's good to go. So I don't understand that. It raised the squeegee back up, but it actually kicked the brushes on once I started to go forward. So maybe it just won't sit in one place and run the brushes. Maybe that's part of our issue here. There's also a couple wires going into this thing. So I probably need to replace the connectors on those because they're, these ones aren't too bad, but the receiving connectors in the battery box are in pretty terrible shape. They're all corroded and falling apart. So maybe these do something for the vacuum. Maybe the vacuum's inside of here. I'm all just kind of figuring this out with you guys out loud here. There's no other place that the vacuum could feasibly be on this unit, so it must be inside of that thing. So here's the connectors what run up to the vacuum pack there. As you can see, these are just rotten, corroded up, falling apart. So we'll put some fresh ends on these things and then connect that up, see what happens. Easy enough. Now, this side doesn't look bad at all, but I don't think I have any of these style connectors to put onto this end now. Now the reason I put a female and a male on one side of this system is because if you put double females or double males on one end, there's a chance that you could connect them incorrectly. So by doing it this way, you remove that possibility. All right, now before somebody tells me in the comments, open flame around a battery compartment or like this, terrible idea actually. If you don't know, batteries when they are discharging, or I believe even when they are charging, like if you're charging a set of batteries, they produce hydrogen gas, and that can build up in an area like this. And if you don't know, hydrogen gas is extremely volatile. it'll blow up big time. All right. Still got that error 04 code. Dang it. Oh, the vacuum kicked on now. So while I don't know the actual definition of that code 04 just yet, just by process of elimination, I'm assuming it has to do with the scrubber assembly here. It's not raising and lowering, nor are the brushes actually turning on. So we're just gonna get in here and start exploring and see what we can find. It looks like this thing should swing out of the way, this squeegee. Yep. So that swings up out of the way. Gives us access to our collection bin here. It has some stuff in it, but it's not too bad. It's a bit rusty. We might need to sandblast and paint that thing so it doesn't rot away on us. Our scrub brush doesn't look too bad to my untrained eye, so that's good. I see these control rods here that kind of do something for our sweeper head, and I have a hard time believing that those could both be bent so perfectly. As you can see, there's another one on the other side there, also curved the same way. So I feel like those have to be made that way, but I'm not really sure. So what I'm looking for down here is whatever controls the elevation of this thing. So there should be a linear actuator somewhere that takes that whole sweeper head and raises and lowers it. All right, so we're on the front right side right now, and I found a couple things I'm looking for here. This is a water filter, or strainer at least, and I think it's busted. Yep. So this thing froze and cracked and broke, and now we'll either have to replace that or repair it. Maybe get some JB Weld on that sucker. The other thing I found was the drain hose I was looking for, so that didn't happen. That looks to be that guy right there. That'll drain out all your clean water. Ah, and look at that right there. The last thing I was looking for is this linear actuator right here. This is what raises and lowers your scrubber head. So that is what appears to be not working. Let's figure out why. Ew. You guys see all the nastiness going on down there? I'm pretty sure that's mold. The guy must have let this thing sit with the water in it for a long time. But it was in a heated garage, so it never froze. Ugh. That's nasty. So I poked around a little bit, and of course, to access the linear actuator that we need, it's down here, hidden in behind the batteries. So basically we have to pull the batteries back out in order to get to this stupid thing. Hopefully I can just slide this tray forward enough to access that. Oh yeah, okay, we're good. Not much to see there. I don't know what I can really do with this. Basically, I'd like to pull it off and kind of bench test it if possible. Hopefully there's a connector and it's not just hardwired in here somewhere. What is this? Oh! Look at that. We might have just got really lucky here. It might just be unplugged. I gotta get a light. I can't even see. So we got this connector right here, and I see wires coming out of the motor. But I can't see the other end of that wire from up here. Maybe I can see it down below. Well, a bit of a bummer here. I followed this wire down, and to the best that I can tell, it looks like it's connected into the wiring harness. So sometimes when manufacturers make a machine like this, there'll be options that when you order yours or buy yours, options that your specific model doesn't have, but they'll build the wiring harnesses for all models. So maybe this went to some sort of other option that this machine didn't have. For instance, in my Bobcat, I have all the wiring for air conditioning, but I don't have the other components for the air conditioning. So I guess to bench test this thing, we need to pull that pin out right there, and that should allow the linear actuator to drop down, and we can pull it out and test it and see what's going on there. Well, if the motor isn't broken yet, I'm going to break it prying against this stupid cover trying to get this pin out. Oh, it's so close. Come on. This has been an unbelievable fight for something so stupid. There we go. Holy crap. Finally free. All right, so now the fun part. Come on. There we go. All right, so we have our linear actuator set up here on the tailgate. We're going to give it a good bench test. Now, if you read the tag on the side of the motor, it actually says that it's 36 volts, but in something like this with a motor on it, not super fancy modern electronics that have all the computer crap integrated to it. This is just a simple motor. You won't hurt it to go low voltage. So I don't believe there's anything in that sweeper that would up the voltage from our 24 input to get to 36 anyways, like this thing's calling for. So they can be running it off of 24 volts. We will see momentarily. I got the jump pack rigged up here with some wires, and I should be able to touch this thing, and theoretically it should run. Look at that. Motor works fine. Now if we want to bring it in, all we got to do is switch those leads around, and it should suck itself back up in there. Look at that. It's perfect. So the motor works just fine. So because you're watching yours truly do this and not somebody smarter like Wes from Watch Wes Work or something, you saw me fight that actuator out of there before putting a meter on the simple connection that would have been much easier to take apart. So anyways, I'm going to flick the switch on right now. That all does its thing. We're coming up green. Okay, yeah, so when I push this button, that should lower the broom carriage or sweeper head or whatever you want to call that center piece right there, and that should be sending voltage to the meter. So let's push the button and see what the meter reads. Contact. We saw 22 volts there for a split second, but not very long. And I would venture to say that it was so quick that my meter just couldn't read all the way up to 24. All right, well, I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly how this whole system works, but I did print out the repair manual, and after reading it, what it describes in the manual is basically a pressure system in here. So if you like ride over a hump in the floor or something, it's supposed to be able to detect that pressure change through this linear actuator and adjust the scrubber head to compensate for that. So I guess because of that system, it's very sensitive to any excess drag on this motor. So after we bench tested it, I plugged it in here and tried it on the floor to see if it worked before I bothered to reinstall it, and it didn't. It kept throwing that same 04 code saying that there was a bind on this screw. So what I did is I took it back and put it on the bench, and I ran it all the way in and all the way out several times. And the first couple times I did that, I did hear it have like a tight spot. It sounded like the motor strained just a little bit, like kind of in the middle of its stroke. So after I ran it a few times, though, that seemed to go away. And now, we hit the button here. Well, it's all the way down now. But we can go down. Ready? Look at that. No codes, baby. So I think we're pretty good here. Should go up now. Check that out, huh? Very nice. So I'm going to get this reinstalled and hopefully the whole thing just works now. We won't know if the scrubber part actually works because there's this big motor up here which actually runs the bristles. We won't know if that works until this thing's that's like the last thing that kicks on, and it only kicks on when you start to drive. It won't just sit here and spin in place. So let me throw this back together and then we'll see if this thing's going to work. All right, well, I just got everything reconnected down here. Actuator's all back into place. Wires are connected. Hopefully, when I plug the battery connectors in, this thing should automatically raise itself up, I do believe. Moment of truth. It picked itself up. No error codes yet. Look at that. Sweet. Let's see if the brushes are going to kick on. All right. We're almost ready to run this thing. Last thing I did was mix up some epoxy and fix up our little water separator canister here. It actually turned out pretty good, so hopefully we don't have to buy another one of these things now. Sounds like it's working. Well, it's definitely working. The brushes are spinning. We just need some water now. We're going to be in business. See how much crusty junk comes out of this hose. There we go. Big old chunks of dirt. I don't even want to touch this stuff, it's nasty. Ugh, that's a whole chunk of wood. There we go. Seems pretty clear. That wasn't too bad. All right, well, I'm working on getting a well drilled out here. I don't have a well just yet. So getting clean water out here is a bit of a challenge. I can get water from the creek, but it's not exactly clean. But then again, neither is what we're going to dump in here. This is actually just rainwater been collected in these barrels. But I get the barrels from the car wash, and they got a little bit of a soap residue in them. So that might just be the ticket for our floor here. All right, well, there's a couple gallons that'll at least show us how this thing's going to work, or if it works. Well, I'm not exactly what you would call impressed just yet. I can't tell if we're actually picking up anything. No, not even a hint of moisture in this line. So the vacuum is not really doing its vacuumy thing. We're also not getting enough water on the ground to really be effective either. Now that could be just due to the fact that I don't have a whole lot in there. It's kind of a gravity bleed system, so water pressure from the tank is going to feed it out through the lines, and there's just a little solenoid valve right down here on the front of your scrubber head, and the water's supposed to just flow through this little drip trough. Yeah, it's not even making it over to this side at all. So that's interesting. That's a problem. Good news, guys. I think we got it working. I just had to put some more water in it, and it's now dispersing the amount of water that I think it should be. You got your flow control down here on the steering column. The vacuum just shut off. And yeah, I think it's pretty well dialed in now. It's going to work. It's not sucking up the water quite as good as the brand new one that I had rented and used here, but that was a brand new one. I wouldn't really expect something used to work quite as good as a brand new one. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of fine tuning on this thing as time goes on, but for right now, it's doing good enough a job where I can get the floor cleaned and I can start to move stuff into the shop, which is the real goal here. So let me start scrubbing. Would you check that out right there? Oh man, this thing did a bang up job on the floor. The only thing that I have to work out on it is that it's just not sucking up the water like I want it to. So it does a great job on the straightaways, but when you make the turn, the water that the squeegee is carrying kind of floats out to the edges there. So it's carrying too much water with it while we're running. So I'm wondering if I'm just not using it correctly. I'm going to read the manual, the user manual, make sure that there's not something I'm doing wrong. But the thing works pretty darn good. I can't complain about that one bit. For $1,000 versus $25,000 brand new, I think we got a pretty good deal here. The only other thing that's really wrong with it is I noticed the more I'm using it here, the more the foot pedal is kind of, I don't know if it's the potentiometer in the foot pedal or if it's the drive motor, but the whole machine kind of gets like some jerkiness going to it. As you're driving along, you kind of get like the jitters out of the acceleration. So I don't know, like I said, could be in the foot pedal, could be in the drive controller, something like that. So we'll play around, check out some wiring. My buddy that sent me this thing, Sam from Scrappy Industries, he told me his did a similar thing, and it was actually just the wires going into the drive motor. So we'll check that out in the future here, but it works for now. So as time goes on and I get some more time to work on this thing, I will examine that and try to get that figured out. But it works for now, and I got to get the whole floor clean because we're actually moving into this shop right now. It's done. So I want to get the whole floor scrubbed before I start moving in stuff in here and bury some of this dirt. While the whole shop's empty, I want to get the entire floor cleaned up and really hit all the nooks and crannies and make sure it's good and clean for a proper move in to a new shop. But this thing definitely did an awesome job. You can see the floor is pretty spectacularly clean. There is a little teeny bit of like water spots like that, but it's pretty darn clean. I can't complain one bit. It did a great job. So anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up here. If you liked the video, do me a big favor. Hit that thumbs up button down below. It really helps out the channel, helps me to keep doing what I'm doing. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Now that I got this new shop, we're going to be hopefully getting into a lot of fun repair videos and custom build videos and who knows what else. So make sure you're subscribed, stick around, check out what I get into. Last but not least, if you want to help support the channel, head on over to dieselcreek.com. Pick yourself up some sweet swag over there. We've got the merch store full of hoodies, t-shirts, sweatshirts, whole nine. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, the link is down in the description. But that's all I've got for now, guys. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Later.